I grew up with Bruce, and he was the most introverted guy you'd ever met in your life. To go from that to like the world's greatest entertainer, it blows my mind.
It's fantastic to be talking to you both today. And Stephen, it's great to see you again, since technically we spent some time together about 6 weeks ago when I was at one of the E Street shows here in Pittsburgh. So thank you for that fantastic evening.
My pleasure.
But so we're here to talk about Road Diary, the brand new Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band documentary about your post-COVID tour. First question that's for the both of you. I know a lot of what Bruce and the band does gets recorded these days. And Tom, you've been involved with a lot of, other filmed E Street Band projects. What was important to show in this film that maybe fans haven't gotten to see before?
Well, Tommy, yeah, I was going to say, I'm going to run with this for a second. I think as a filmmaker, I wanted to show a side that has not been presented in any of the documentaries, which is the behind the scenes, fly on the wall moment of a band that's not been together, about to go out on the road again after almost 6 years not being together. So you have that element. And then there's the other side of diving deep into the archive and explaining E Street history with the core E Street members of Stevie, Max, Gary, and Roy. I wanted that history presented and then just bring it up to date with some of the new additions that have been added onto the stage. Explaining that history's in that way has not been done. You get some of the beauty of E Street early days and some of the humor, and then digging deep in the vault and finding magical moments of two members, Danny Federici and Clarence Clemens, to bring their power and beauty up front again, to also introduced to an audience. The other thing is having a sense of what the tour is right now, and what the tour, the structure of this tour, how it held a great story and a narrative in the set list itself. The power of putting two songs together and coming up with an emotional arc. And then also the simple beauty that I can't really put into words, which is what it feels like to be with the E Street Band, watching them from the pit. So I went to Europe, I went to America, and I tried to capture that audience with the power of raw rock and roll. And in that, those were the things that came forward as I started to film, that there was this opportunity to go for those themes that have not been hit yet on the other docs. But it was an organic process. There's no set POV. I'm just trying to keep up with these guys and film.
Okay, so you mentioned, so you're mentioning set lists, which is actually sort of a big part of this doc. And yeah, I mean, Stephen, if you'll indulge me, I would definitely like to talk set lists for a moment. So at the beginning of this film, we see a renewed focus on a defined and somewhat rigid E Street concert set list, which is maybe influenced a bit by Bruce's experience with his Broadway show. But then we also see flashbacks to previous tours where you guys are, doing the sign request and the stump the band type of thing. So, Stephen, I'm curious, which version of an E Street concert do you personally prefer? Meticulously crafted or a bit more chaotic?
Don't worry, we're going to bring the chaos either way. Don't worry about that. That's all built in. No, but I honestly, it's two different things. And it was after 40 years of doing it one way, it was fun to do it another way for just one tour. I mean, I liked the change of doing the same set every night like a Broadway show, because each song had a purpose, which is more or less the way I do my own shows with the Disciples of Soul, and really the way most bands do it. Only a few bands change songs, really, when you think about it. There's only the jam bands, the Grateful Dead and Fishes, and us, so it's an unusual thing to do what we have done for 40 years, which is, out of the however many songs it is, out of the 28, 30 songs, we'll change half the songs every night. That's quite a lot. Certainly at least a third. And so to do it in a way that was more structured, was enjoyable as far as I'm concerned. Maybe it's not something you do every tour. Obviously, we just did it once, and already by the last shows we just have been doing, already it was loosening up, to a more kind of a mixture of the new show and the old show already. So this may never happen again, but it was fun doing it for a while and having each song have a specific purpose and having the theme color all of the songs, even though the set wasn't done in a linear, literally a Broadway way of having a linear, literal storyline. But the themes of mortality and vitality that we balanced it out with was present in all the songs. It colored, most obviously a song like Backstreets, which took on a whole different meaning. But also, including a song like Night Shift, those songs tended to lean on the theme and strengthen the theme. So it was just fun to do something different, and it was very, very effective. I got a reaction from the audience that many audience members had the most intense experience with that show than they've ever had. And I mean, people who have been coming for 40 years, they said that was the most intense emotional experience they've ever had. So it was just more focused in that direction. And I must mention, Bruce's writing is extraordinary at this point, and I think, frankly, taken for granted and overlooked. I mean, the writing on Letter to You is absolutely extraordinary, all right? And I'm a pretty good songwriter myself, okay? And I know it when I see it. And I mean, it is amazingly personal and a whole different way of writing, really a different subject matter, and it's so effective. And I think that also, of course, was part of the intensity of the show. So I loved it, but I love it both ways,
When that set list does start to evolve, and you even made mention that, the set list has started to evolve this year from what's covered in the doc kind of last year. How does that work? Do you just start rehearsing different things at soundcheck, or does Bruce come in with ideas? But when songs start sort of moving around and coming in and out in the middle of a tour, what's the process for that?
Yeah. I mean, he'll just start throwing in some other things in, and if we haven't done them for a while, we'll rehearse. We may rehearse it at the soundcheck once, or maybe even backstage. If we haven't done it for a while. Or not, sometimes he'll just throw something in that we just haven't played in years, and we just kind of jump in. So there's no set pattern to it, but it's just a matter of what Bruce is feeling like that night.
All right, one final setlist question before we move on. Stephen, I wanted to ask you if there's a song or two that you're always trying to convince Bruce to put back in the set list and you just can't talk him into it.
How much time have you got? There's a great history of this, starting with every song that got rejected on the albums in the first place. I mean, some of the most amazing songs never made it onto the albums, and have not made it into the set list either. Oh Lord, where do we begin with this? But there's the outtakes through the years, starting with the ones on tracks, the loose ends and restless nights, and that whole bunch. There's a whole bunch there. Then there's a whole bunch that came out, on the outtakes on the Darkness side, Little Things My Baby Does, and Gotta Get the Feeling, that bunch, and, the Spanish Eyes and all those wonderful. I mean, people should have careers with his outtakes, I'm surprised they're not covered more often, to be honest. But lately, I mean, the one song that I really felt strongly about that I thought we were going to do on this past year and a half was Burning Train, which from the new album that we did a fantastic arrangement of in rehearsal. And we may have done it once live, but
Once in
it ended up
Barcelona.
not
Yeah.
right. It ended up not being part of the show. So that's the latest that's the latest one that I'd like to see us doing. But look, it's a wonderful problem to have. It's too many great songs. It's just a wonderful problem.
Thom, there's a moment in this doc when you're just focusing on these amazing faces in the crowd, and everybody is wide-eyed, and a lot of people are crying, and some people look like they're just having an epiphany. What's the process for digging into the footage and sort of finding those specific shots amongst all the faces and all the footage that you must have when you're putting together something like this?
Well, the process of figuring out what faces to use in a montage where you're trying to get something that you can't explain, which is the magic of E Street. I think that comes from the place of wanting to stay clear of film cliches, meaning certain people pointing at cameras and looking directly in the camera. I wanted honest interaction. And my cues that I'm taking really come from, my filmic cues come from the presence of how the band itself is portraying themselves in the night. It's a stripped down stage. There's no special effects. There's a beauty and an energy that reads to me as pure. So when I'm filming this magical space of the concert, either whether it's the band themselves or the audience, I'm trying to capture that thing that you can't put into words. And sometimes it might come in with a slow motion shot or just a shot in a medium close-up where you see someone connect and you see that their eyes have that transformation. To me, that's the power of music and rock and roll. I hunt out those moments. So I'll shoot for 2 hours and it'll only be 10 seconds of one face that gives me that. But that comes from being around the band. That comes from being lucky enough to witness, like I did with Road Diary, the band starting in a small little black box theater, rehearsing, and then suddenly in this open field in Europe, and the sheer energy shift of that. You want to try to have that translate in a movie, and I was chasing those emotional tones, and I was chasing the emotional thought that music, especially Bruce and the E Street Band at this time, is really needed in our world after the shutdown and the space that we're at. So those faces were part of what I was witnessing, that transformation.
Stephen, there's a bit in the doc where Bruce gives you the reins to just lead rehearsals for a while without him. Was that nerve-wracking, or was it more like, hey, it's about time? What was the thought process when that finally happened?
No, that's been our routine for forever, really.
Really? Okay.
We made a bit of a joke that he sort of made it official on this tour. Because,
so it was more just about the title then.
Yes, yeah, because we had some new people in the band,
yeah, and
they were going to be like, "Why is this guy suggesting something to me?" Who the hell is this guy? So Bruce felt, we better make it official just for the new people, But no, nothing really has changed. Bruce wants to, concentrate on the bigger picture. The musical stuff, he knows he can trust me with, because I know how he thinks for the most part. And we think, we think the same way pretty much. And he's going to make a change here and there, of course, but mostly, it's not something that he needs to think about. And frankly, he has a bigger role to play. The music, of course, has to be right, but his communication with an audience is a very personal one, and it's a very deep, and I think Thom captures this very well, and Bruce, even in the narration also, but for the first time, I think it's revealed, that you got to dig really deep down to do what we do, especially as a front guy, the guy out front. It seems easy and we make it look easy, we're doing it a long time, but that doesn't change the fact every tour is a new tour. Every record's a new record, and it's a new experience, and you're going to come out and, are you ready to go out there and spill your guts, for 3 hours again? Are you ready to go through that again? Okay. Because it's not, it's an intense experience, for all of us, but mostly for Bruce. So, that process of literally spilling your guts every night and saying, being naked to the world, is a very intense experience that I think requires most of his attention and rightfully so, appropriately so. So, he doesn't want to have to worry about the details of how he's doing that. That's going to be taken care of, by me and the rest of the band. I mean, the rest of the band are extraordinary, in and of themselves. They really produce themselves, they're so good. That part of it which would require a lot of time from somebody else in some other situation, doesn't really require much time from him. He wants to focus on the bigger picture and rightfully so,
There's a moment where a fan is being interviewed and he says that he hoped you guys tour forever, but he's trying to soak up every last minute just in case. Stephen, do you feel that same way, or do you think Bruce or the band overall sort of feels that same way?
Yes. Every tour could be the last. We've already, we've lost 2 of our brothers already, and, a little bit of you goes with them, so we make the most of it, make sure every moment counts, but that's how we all should live our lives, right? It's not just rock and roll bands, but, live in the moment, man, 100%. That's what life's all about. So yeah, we feel the same way.
Thom, I'm curious how Bruce's narration that appears throughout the documentary came together. Is that something that he writes and has done early in the process, or does it come later during the assembly of the film when a cut's being put together, or how does that work?
And Bruce's narration is developed in the process of the cutting. There will be times where I will just create something to show him, and I do not have to suggest any details of what the VO should say. For example, I can just send him images of the crowd, and he will get a sense of what I'm seeing, and or sometimes it's photographs and a bit of temp score, a tonal quality, and I'll have a discussion of time or one of the themes that is represented in his writing or what the band has created as this show. So I will send him visual references at times. He will send me some writing that takes it to a whole other level. And then I start all over again and recut the whole thing. And then a score comes in, and this Stephen is laughing because he understands this process. But I'm sending him a sketch of what I'm hoping it could be. And then I receive this dream of writing by text, and then the next day an audio version of it. And then you're in this wonderful place of how do you represent this idea with what visual? And you get out of your own way and start to let the film in the editing room tell you. But also I'm saying I'm standing in the shadow of the band and Bruce, and picking up the tonal qualities of the E Street history and also the current show. Road Diary, I stayed close to what I was witnessing and feeling from the music, and also I'm wearing many hats. I'm wearing many hats because I have the role of director, editor, and then also the guy who knows this is really amazing. No one's ever seen this before. And Road Diary gave me a chance to share some of that, especially with the subtleties of the E Street band and Stevie and Bruce interacting and working, and some of the subtleties that, unless you're there watching a rehearsal, you couldn't imagine this, and you could never see it.
There's a bit in this film about how even though the US audiences are great, things kind of do get taken to the next level when the band goes to Europe. Stephen, you're the expert on this, so I have to ask you, what is the current state of rock and roll in America, and what do we need to do to make sure those embers keep on burning?
Oh man. Look, we're the luckiest guys of the luckiest generation ever. We grew up in a renaissance, man, that only happens every couple of 100 years, and that set our standards very, very high, and the whole band thing was just a big part of our culture growing up, whether you were a musician or not. The Beatles literally changed our culture overnight, and it wasn't just for musicians. If you went out as a teenager, you went to the drive-in theater, or you went to see a band, or you were in a band, I mean, that was it. That's all you did, So, I mean, that's changed, obviously. All right. And the culture has changed. We have a whole range of distractions now for this generation. Luckily, rock and roll is still the biggest thing live. We've managed to kind of, transcend our own culture at this point, our own whatever is fashionable, and managed to just carve out our own sort of world live. And festivals are kind of keeping things alive as well as us lucky ones that get a chance to tour individually. But festivals have been kind of taken the place of the club scene and even the theater scene and the arena scene, which are mostly gone. The infrastructure no longer exists, so it's difficult. It's difficult to say where things are going. Other than we certainly hope we can. I mean, I spent the last 25 years trying to recreate an infrastructure to keep things going with my radio network, with my record company, with my publishing companies, with my school curriculum, all of which has to do with keeping rock and soul alive and accessible to future generations so that they can experience what we have experienced. You can hear it every day on my radio network. But it's just not going to ever be the biggest part of our culture again because of just so many other distractions, and so all we can do is, we've kind of returned to the cult that we started as, depending on how far you want to go back. You can go back to, Little Richard and Chuck Berry and Elvis Presley, breaking through, and then the coup d'etat that the British invasion staged in the 60s, when rock and roll became the mainstream for 30 years or so. But there was a blip on the radar screen, man, of history. And let's face it, that's what it was. And we're kind of back to being a cult again. And maybe that's where we belong, man. I don't know. That's kind of where an art form born of rebellion and liberation, maybe that's where it belongs. It belongs in that underground kind of scene where things are just a little bit on the edge, a little bit experimental, a little bit risky, because the corporatization of our world now doesn't allow for that. The corporatization of the business, of all the businesses, music, TV, and movies, is now reducing, worried about the next fiscal quarter for Wall Street, and that's not how things get invented or appreciated or supported, and certainly not how they develop, all right? Because greatness needs to develop, all right? And it's not born. And right now, there's no room in our culture to develop anything because of the corporate mentality of worried about the next fiscal quarter, is all that matters. And so we're in it's a real problem. How do we now develop things and give them time to develop when there's not that kind of support from the business world. And that's the challenge, I think, for the future.
Okay, well, I am out of time. Congratulations to you both on the film. Have a good rest of your day. And Stevie, you guys keep coming to Pittsburgh as much as you can. I promise to keep attending.
You got it, my friend.
Bye, guys.